Hello everyone, this is Dartt, and today I'll be sharing with you a survival hunter build that's been revised for World of Warcraft post-launch and further for patch 7.1. I'll be going into detail on talents, combat rotations, artifact trait progression, relics, legendaries, and everything else I can think of to help make your survival hunter as competitive as possible in whatever setting. So let's get to work. I'll be using the Survival Hunter Guide from icyveins.com as a basis for this. It's authored by Azertharian, formerly of Method and now raiding with Vanguard. A very well-respected player who's done a lot of work theory crafting and writing guides for the Hunter class. If you haven't checked out his guides on Icy Veins, I highly recommend it. About Survival. Survival has been completely redesigned in Legion to work as a melee spec. It has the most utility of all the Hunter specs and strong single-target DPS, but weak AoE damage potential. It is possible to pull off crazy burst damage, but the spec in general can be very difficult to play, especially if you're used to playing a ranged class. Right now, Survival depends upon Mongoose Bite, which has 3 charges, deals 250% of weapon damage as physical, and grants Mongoose Fury. Mongoose Fury increases Mongoose Bite damage by 50% for 14 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. Successive attacks do not extend Mongoose Fury's duration. There are cooldowns that allow you to use more Mongoose Bites, and getting the most out of these burst windows and the complicated rotation that goes along with that makes Survival the hardest Hunter spec to play effectively. Finally, Survival no longer manually generates focus. Instead, it passively generates focus at 10 focus per second. Viability. Survival hunters are on par with other specs as far as single-target DPS goes, but not really competitive. To make things worse, it's not really very highly rated against other melee classes in general. It does have high single-target DPS and burst and utility, but utility isn't what you're looking for in a raid setting most of the time, and its weak AoE puts them on the bottom of the barrel where Mythic Plus is concerned. It seems to me that if Survival has a niche, it would be in arena play and specifically in the 3s bracket. However, if you take a look at the 2500 plus range, Survival is barely represented at all. Really, right now, Survival is a novelty spec and it needs some attention from the developers if it is really to be successful and competitive. That's not to say you're doomed to failure if you pick a Survival Hunter, just that you have your work cut out for you. The background video is actually of me playing as a Survival Hunter in Emerald Nightmare, downing some bosses, even though I'd confess I'm not 100% with this spec, nor do I have a really well-developed artifact weapon. So it is definitely doable. Talent choices. Icy Veins recommends the following talents for most situations: Throwing Axes, Snake Hunter, Post Haste, Improved Traps, Ranger's Net, Dragon's Fire Grenade, and Expert Trapper. I agree with these choices, though I'd definitely keep a stack or so of Tombs of the Tranquil Mind on hand to switch in and out of camouflage. Having any form of stealth can be very helpful, even if the uptime on camouflage has been effectively cut in half due to its cooldown now equaling its duration. For raiding, the optimum talent selections are pretty much the same, except that you'll want Way of the Machnathal for your Tier 1 talent. As far as pet talents go, it's recommended you use a Tenacity pet with Thunderstomp active. This gives you a chance to gain a charge of Mongoose Bite for every enemy hit. Of course, you can use other pets, but make sure they have some form of special ability that can generate Mongoose Bite charges. Alternatives Icy Veins gave are Carrion Birds with Bloody Screech, River Beasts with Gruesome Bite, and Scorpids with Deadly Sting. Artifact trait progression, relics, and legendaries. The recommended way to complete Talon Claw works like this. Starting with Fury of the Eagle, take Iron Talons, Hellcarver, Raptorous Cry, Explosive Force, on the way to unlocking Aspect of the Sky Lord. Then, Hunter's Guile and Lacerating Talons on the way to Eagle's Bite. Next, Fluffy Go, Embrace of the Aspects, and Bird of Prey before picking up your third and last golden trait, Talon Strike. After that, round things out by taking Sharpened Fang, My Beloved Monster, Terms of Engagement, and Hunter's Bounty in that order. On the subject of relics, higher item level is almost always going to be the way to go. One relic item level translates into around 600 DPS. Going from worst to best relic trait is around 1300 DPS. So 2 to 3 item levels definitely outweighs a lackluster relic trait. If you're curious though, for single target, and this is where survival shines, so I would advise running with this exact list. You want Lacerating Talons, Sharpened Fang, or My Beloved Monster as relic traits. You could give honorable mention to Explosive Force, Fluffy Go, or Raptor's Cry, with Hellcarver trailing everything to the point that it's basically worthless or even a slight detriment. On the subject of legendaries, I am still hearing that people do not have legendaries, so don't be discouraged if you're one of these people. Keep plugging away on those world quests, battlegrounds, Mythic Plus dungeons, and heroic bosses. There is bad luck protection, so in higher math terms, the cumulative distribution curve is determinate. Yeah, I know a lot of you are probably wondering, what the hell did Dartt just say? I thought it sounded cool. Basically, there's a finite number of times the RNG can say no before it's forced to cough one up for you. For those of you who have a legendary, you're going to want to use it simply due to its item level and stats. If you have 2, but for some reason haven't gotten the class order hall ability that lets you equip an extra legendary, or if you have 3 or more, here's a list ranking them for you so you can get the most out of your allowed legendaries. Call of the Wild is regarded as the best, followed by Hellbrine, Rope of the Mist Marauder, or Frizzo's Finger Trap, depending on the situation. Guessing where his trapping treads comes in after these, with not much said about any of the rest, so use your best judgment. Rotations, opening sequences, and cooldowns. To open, you should pre-pot using Potion of Old War. Then spam Raptor Strike 4 times to build Way of the Machnathal stacks. Follow this with Lacerate, Explosive Trap, and Dragon's Fire Grenade. Spam Mongoose Bite until you're out of charges. Then activate Snake Hunter and Aspect of the Eagle. Spam Mongoose Bite again until you're out of charges, and finish up with Fury of the Eagle before going into your normal rotation. The optimum single target rotation for survival starts off with casting Fury of the Eagle as often as possible when you have 6 stacks of Mongoose Fury. Then, Raptor Strike as needed to maintain 4 stacks of Way of the Machnathal. Explosive Trap, Dragon's Fire Grenade, then Lacerate. Then spam Mongoose Bite if it's at 3 charges, and at a good place with respect to Aspect of the Eagle and Mongoose Fury. Otherwise, use Flanking Strike as a filler, and Raptor Strike as a focus dump. The idea is to use the right abilities on cooldown and maximize Mongoose Bites without wasting them. You do this by stacking Mongoose Fury as high as possible, but you need to make sure you have 3 charges of Mongoose Bite ready when your CDs come up. When you use Snake Hunter and Aspect of the Eagle, you spend all your charges, and this makes certain that most of your high stack Mongoose Bites are done while damage buffs are active. Also, it's easier to have 6 stacks of Mongoose Fury when Fury of the Eagle comes off cooldown. When Mongoose Bite reaches 3 charges and Mongoose Fury is down, go ahead and spend all 3 charges and proceed with your rotation. But use Mongoose Bite as much as possible rather than waiting for it to build to 3 charges to build Mongoose Fury. When Mongoose Fury expires, proceed with your rotation as normal until Mongoose Bite reaches 3 charges or your CDs come back up. For MultiTarget, not a lot changes. Basically use Butchery on cooldown if you have it. If you're against 4 or more targets, don't bother with Flanking Strike, instead use Carve as a focus dump. If you use Serpent Sting, you should use Carve to refresh the debuff on 3 or more targets. The main cooldown you'll want to keep an eye on as a survival hunter is Aspect of the Eagle, though there are a few more that can unlock through talents. You should definitely not allow your pet to auto-cast Thunderstomp and instead macro them into another ability. I would advise Mongoose Bite itself to make sure you don't trip yourself up. Icy Veins advises you to use Growl as well in a macro, but I won't parrot this, mainly because it's a good way to get tossed out of a raid if your raid's tanks are already having to contend with touchy tank swap mechanics. Stat priorities. Of course, being a hunter, agility is going to be your main stat and what you want before anything else. Period. End of story. As far as secondary stats, you want haste, versatility, critical strike, and mastery in that order. Patch 7.1 has buffed mastery to include auto attacks in mastery, hunting companions' chance to generate charges of Mongoose Bite, so this increases its value a bit. So definitely don't view mastery as a complete waste of a secondary stat. If you're at all curious, I would advise using either AskMrRobot.com or the Pawn add-on when choosing between pieces of gear. And another thing to take note of is there's really no soft caps in place right now, so shoot for as much as your best stats as possible. Gems, enchants, and consumables. For gems, you want 1 Saber's Eye of Agility and Quick Dawn Lights in all of their sockets. Personally, I would socket the Saber's Eye in an item you're least likely to upgrade soon, be it a best in slot or an item very close to the top of your best in slot list, and a relatively high item level with excellent secondary stats. For enchants, you want Enchant Neck, Mark of the Hidden Satyr, Enchant Cloak, Binding of Agility, and Enchant Ring, Binding of Haste. Patch 7.1 has gone live, so prices should be falling off on these to the point where they're affordable, so definitely make use of them. Consumables. You should be using Flask of the 7th Demon for raids, but if you've been using those old Dranic Agility pots, now would be a good time to upgrade 2 Potions of War. Be sure to keep an eye on the auction hall prices and try to get a good deal on them. Ashari Salad works well for the haste buff. Try and pick up a stack or 2 before raids to keep those pesky Tattletale add-ons quiet. Also, Defiled Augment runes. These things are awesome for pushing out just a little bit of extra damage and downing bosses in fewer attempts. Unfortunately, they're not easy to come by, and other hunters, rogues, feral druids, and the like are going to be snapping them up if they can get them cheap on the auction hall, so be very watchful. Since 7.1 went live, they now work in Mythic Plus dungeons, so they'll be even more in demand. Theory crafting and simulations. I would refer you to Icy Veins for this. It's alright there in the Hunter Survival class guide for you to look over. They do an excellent job with this, so again, definitely check them out and stay on top of your game. Once again, I'd like to take the time to thank all of you for watching these videos. You're the best audience anybody could possibly hope for. Please hit that like button if this helps you. I love reading your comments and questions, so please leave those below. If you have questions, I'll do my best to get back to you with an answer as soon as I can. I'm not a theory crafter, to be completely honest, but I do know a few people, so don't be afraid to ask. Also, if you know a survival hunter that this guide would help, share it with them. Finally, hit that subscribe button if you haven't. This is Dartt. Good luck and have fun.